So starting from the right, we have Katharina Borchert, who is the CEO of Spiegel Online since 2010. We have Donata Hopfen, CEO of Bild, since 2010 as well. So she's the number 1 in traffic, she's the number 2 in traffic, and we have the number 3 in traffic, so we should be able to talk about news online. And we have Svetlana Mironyuk, who is the editor-in-chief of the Russian News and Information Agency. And I would like to start by asking a question to everyone, is to get a sense of the numbers. So how many people do you reach with your news, and what do you call news? How do you define news? What is news for you? We can start any order.
I think we have still a fairly traditional definition of news. We're very, very focused on politics and economics and breaking news and very traditional reporting. But when I look where we come from, and when I look at the weekly magazine, obviously our definition of news online is a lot broader than the scope of subjects covered in the magazine. So, but it's still fairly traditional. We do very little people journalism and things like that. We're still very, very hard news driven.
And how many people do you reach?
About 11 million uniques a month.
Which is larger than what you would reach with a magazine as well.
Well, you can't really, honestly, you can't really compare the numbers, because the magazine circulation numbers is a weekly. And the uniques, the way the German measurement works, is a monthly. So I'd argue, yes, we reach a lot more people than the magazine, but you can't honestly really compare the numbers.
What about you, Donata?
Well, we reach a little bit more than Spiegel, around 30 million, and that is more than 220 million visits on a monthly basis. Also not comparable to the newspaper because the measurement is different. But I think for a brand like Bild, the online part is very similar to what we're doing in print. It's very short news, very photo and picture driven, and what we transfer to the digital world is the composition and the way we put together the news and the way we stress and value the different articles, the composition of the different topics, of different themes, and especially comparing it to other social or user-generated news. I think for us it's very important to always be very exclusive and to make sure that our sources are safe and sure, and that we always can rely on the journalists we have out in the market.
I represent a news agency, which is actually the biggest news agency in Russia. And we reach about from 16 to 20 million readers. Why is the difference between 16 and 20 million? Because we have a group of sites, about 42 news sites of different on different parts of audience, and 20 million is this total amount of readers which we have. And what are news for me? I thought about the question when you asked me before. Being a news agency, you understand that news are a stream which you have 24/7, which exhausts you terribly, and people in news work after 3-5 years working in the regime of 24/7, 365 days per year, you are completely exhausted. And for us as a news agency in this digital world, in this digital decade, it was easier to transform to web formats and to be adjusted to the new audiences and new values of these audiences.
Thank you very much. I'd like to ask a sort of philosophical question, but a very important one. In a world where everyone can publish and everyone can curate, and sometimes very, very intelligent people can publish and are not professional journalists, what is the value, what is the added value of institutionalized media, so companies doing that professionally with paid people? What do you think is the thing that we bring to the table as structured organizations versus the world of amateurs?
For us, 10 years ago, we had a problem where to get the news, where to find the sources. where to find the information. Now the problem is absolutely opposite. We are filtering the news, we are verifying the news, and we are trying to serve as a source of verified news for the audience. That's the main added value which we do as news agency in the stream of news.
So it's trust in a lot of sense, and a lot of work trying to filter the good from the bad.
Reputation and credibility which audience give you. And
one question, are you a private company?
No, I'm state-owned.
State-owned, okay. You want to comment on that? Is that possible to be... what does that mean to be a state-owned curator of news? It's a very...
You know, in news it's easier to be state-owned than in... because it's journalism of fact. In the journalism of opinions, which are newspapers or any other formats of journalism, it's more difficult to have a state as your stakeholder.
I'll come back to that later when we talk about the political ecosystem. What about you, Donata? What's the added value?
Well, I think the added value is that you bring news from all different topics, from all different segments, and from all around the world with secure sources. And I think also one of the differences that the traditional media does in this world is that we are being uncomfortable at times. It's not only about putting together news, but it's also to look behind and to have the relationships to really talk and analyze things that are behind the scenes, to bring them up. And as I said, it's serendipity, is how you put it together, and to bring people composition of news which are not only focused on one special subject or one special segment, but to put together all different news that are relevant. So I think it's also an educational part that we are taking.
And on a similar note, what is the importance of creating the news yourself? So if someone really intelligent writes something really intelligent in a blog, do you feel comfortable linking to it, or what is the thinking about this?
I mean, absolutely. I deeply value the fact how internet has changed publishing, and that anybody can be out there and write brilliant stories or brilliant analysis, or even uncover stuff that we missed. And I think we've gotten a lot better as an industry altogether, but especially at Spiegel Online as well, linking to stuff that's on the web and linking to our original sources, and bloggers can be original sources for us as well. I think a lot of the value that we most likely will continue to bring to the table is the kind of overview we still give of what is really relevant during the day. We see a lot of our visitors return 4 times, 6 times a day. I think it's almost like an addiction to come and see if the world's still standing, only read 2 or 3 stories and then be gone again, but come several times a day to see if you missed anything of relevance. And I think to provide that as a single person would be really, really difficult. And I also think that the quality of research, of reporting, of journalism that we provide as publishers, the safe space to work, the access we provide, is really difficult to get to on a big variety of topics as an individual. I think you can get really, really good with regard to one special topic you focus on, but we have over 100 people doing that are really, really good and have a lot of means that we as publishers provide. So I think we're by no means getting old or useless out there. There's a lot of value that publishers still bring. But the ecosystem has changed, and I really value the fact that it has.
Okay. Asking the women question for DLDwomen, you all run sites that have 65% plus men's readership. So where are the women getting their news from, or where's the missing piece?
I wish I knew, ladies, what's wrong? Why? And I think that goes for all our sites, and all the other publishers I talk to can relate to that. The hard news audience is still very male-dominated, and I refuse to believe that women aren't interested in hard news. I refuse to believe that. So do we provide it in a wrong way? Do we need to find a different approach? I don't want to, I mean, we're not going to sugarcoat news, and I don't think that's what women want. But women make up 50% of the internet population as well. And the interesting fact is, if we look at, once we start looking at how, what works in social media networks, and we see that our audience on Twitter and on Facebook is at least 50% female. So why do we reach them there, and why don't we have the same gender balance directly on our site? I mean, we have a lot of internal debate about that as well. Do we have too many pictures of tanks in Syria? And do we need a different approach there? What is it?
Well, actually, for me, the message is not as negative, because Bild, there are a lot of international guests here, but I think the Germans that are here know that Bild tends to be a very masculine media. It is very much focused on sports, and it tends to have a quite naked lady somewhere in the paper. And so for us, having around 60% male audience means that we are a lot more feminine than we are in print. So we are on a good way. But still, we have just built our own female portal called Stylebook, because we said that we will not be able to change the positioning of Bild. We need something that is dedicated to women, because what we find, and I think that's one of the problems we all share, that the users we have on our websites tend to be office users. And I think we do have more male persons working in offices still in Germany. I think the employers rate on the male side is a lot higher. So when people want to access the internet during the daytime, that might cause why we are still more male than we are female. But being a female in Bild, we always try, I mean, it's not only myself, but we have a lot of female journalists, and we always try to bring more female side into the page, because it is, the target group is 100% of Germans, and it should not be dedicated to men only.
But, I mean, maybe I'm just really stubborn there, and I really love the stuff you do with Stylebook. I'm slightly envious, but do we really need to start a style section to get more women to Spiegel Online? What is it? Why is our political reporting
Don't try it. Better don't try it. Because you might be successful.
Well, that's scary. You know, now we're getting into a competition here. I might actually have to do that. No, but I still can't believe that having a style section, as much as I'd like to do that, is the solution to attracting more women to our site. And yes, we probably do still have more male office workers, but even the women staying at home, don't they read news? How do they consume news? Is that still mostly TV driven, or do women really don't show as much interest into political reporting, which would, I still refuse to believe that.
I think what will be very interesting is when we first get the market studies around mobile, understanding who is really using the mobile devices and who is accessing our contents from the mobile world, because we see that our user groups are very different from what we've known from print and also from the traditional stationary internet. So I think that every woman in this room probably has at least one mobile, even two, and I think that will really drive the female usage of websites of whatever kind, especially of news sites as well.
Do you see the same thing in Russia?
I have almost the same explanations and same behavioral patterns in Russia. We also have 2/3 of the audience which is male. And from the point of view of advertising revenues, it's more profitable to have male audience, because advertisers love them more. At the same time, working on attracting female audience, we understood that their media consumption depends upon their behavior, what they do during the day. They don't sit at the office, I mean in Russian culture. They have to go somewhere to take their children, to bring them to school. They have to buy something. They do many things which are not in one and the same place, where they have computer and the possibility to read something and to consume the news. That's why they either listen to the radio or they use mobile devices. And understanding this gives us the key how to attract this part of audience to RIA Novosti. We launched an experiment a year ago. We are making weekend news, which are soft news, mostly for women, like kitchen, art, culture, and whatever. Special editions, special format for women. And in this part, on Saturdays and Sundays, we have more female audience than men.
Moving to mobile, because Donata mentioned it, how does it change content? Is news different on mobile, or is this just a distribution medium?
I think it's very different because I think the way that you consume mobile content, it's very different from how you consume the traditional stationary internet content. You have less time, the navigation is still not as comfortable, and I think it's very important to compose the website so that the user directly finds what he's looking or she's looking for. So I think with the mobile phone, you tend to use, or you tend to visit a website more often, but you spend less time. And also we find that it is very important to build the articles in a different way. You need less photo, actually. It has to be smaller because you have to fit more into the page. So for build speaking, it's the same content. We have the same database of content we send to all our different medias. But we have a special team composing the mobile websites and the applications, because the way of storytelling in a mobile device, because also it's very location based. People want to know what's happening around them. And that's, I think that you have to put the website together, although the content may be the same.
I think, at least in our experience, obviously we're not as location based and location driven. From the experience we've gathered so far, mobile is a very, very breaking news space, even more than the web is. Because as Donata said, you have less time, you want to have an even quicker overview. And if you're in a breaking news situation, mobile is the thing you turn to even more often. We saw that when our president, Christian Wulff, was about to announce that he's stepping back. And our mobile usage went through the roof, like nothing we've ever seen before. And so far, I think the mobile space is even more male than, unfortunately, even more male than the web space. Males really do tend to be the early adopters, and we see that on our site as well, which also means that so far, and I think we'll continue to see that, mobile is very, very sports driven. We can see that a far higher percentage on mobile than on our website go for sports first, especially on the weekend during football season, and which is obviously something that we cater to then as well.
Adding to that, very interesting that we find the usage peaks of the notebook and stationary internet are around midday, at around 1 p.m. after or before lunch, while on mobile the usage peaks at around 7 in the morning and around 11 p.m. So that means that people tend to take their mobile to bed and they check the news before they go to bed and they wake up at night. And that also for us means that we have to work 24/7 on the mobile device, because we have to make sure that the user that just checked the news before he went to bed has a new news or a new composition of news in the morning. And that is very interesting.
It's an interesting goal to be the first site to be checked in the morning and the last site that you check before you go to sleep.
Well, we have learned yesterday it was Facebook, huh? I think Mr. I forgot his name, from O2 told us that 47% of users first thing they do in the morning is checking Facebook before they say good morning. So
yeah, and our goal must be that, you know, at least we should still strive for number one, but.
You know, several months ago I found myself, me and my husband, in the morning brushing the teeth and facing the iPad which is staring on the mirror. I would say that a year ago, if somebody would say me that I will start my morning, I begin my morning with reading the news, I will never believe, because there are too much news in my life.
I read it in bed before I even get up. So I do check our mobile website in bed before I...
Okay, I don't do that. You don't? No.
So I would like
Welcome to the club.
I would like to switch to a bit of a more complex question, and that is, there's some legal aspect to it which we don't really want to discuss. It's called Leistungsschutzrecht in Germany, and it's called differently in Russia. But I want to know about how you deal with the ecosystem, whether it's political ecosystem or whether it's the infrastructure ecosystem. So how ambivalent are you in sharing on Facebook your article, knowing that people will end up maybe reading them there, or how did you feel about SEO in Google in the earlier part of the 2000 years? Did that help you? Did that hurt you? How ambivalent are you about having your content all over the place linking back to you?
I think Spiegel Online has always fared really well, believing that they should go wherever their readers are. We were the first on the web, and we've always tried to be as accessible through any channel that you could possibly come to us. I think it's no big secret that we're not very good with SEO, and we've never done a lot of that. So I can't really say a lot about that, but the ambivalence of putting your content out everywhere and having additional sources of traffic through search engines, through social media, obviously is big, because you, as we all know, through Google, at one point you rely on that, and you can't go back. But still, I think if you look at the time spent on social media, it is such a huge part of people's lives, and it is so incredibly important. It would be close to suicide not being out there and not delivering news to wherever your people want to have it. The secret, or the kind of balance we all have to find, is how much, what kind, in what intensity do you put out there? Do you really want to have a reader on a Facebook reader so that people basically stay in Facebook and consume your news? Do you have a team that puts only a certain kind of news out there? How do you represent yourself as a media brand? I think that's a really, really important aspect. What kind of news do you put out there? And we're still all trying to figure it out, but I think there's no turning back, because it has become such an important part of web's reality and everybody's daily lives.
I think that Spiegel and Bild especially are two very large brands that have the chance and also the necessity to build a direct customer relationship. And that means that we always have to make sure that the majority of our users come directly to us without being driven by whatever search engine or network there be. But still, I think that we are experimenting a lot with different social media, with search engines, and I think, as Katharina said, you have to be where the user is, but you have to make sure that you don't give away too much for free, and that you don't lose your own brand responsiveness, and that you have the responsibility for your content. So we have Facebook channels for different resorts. We have Facebook channels for different brands, and it works well. But it's not that we are driving more than 1% of our users from social media. So I think doing a little bit of everything is okay. But I think if you start to depend on whatever social network or search engine, you're lost. I think then you've lost the game, because you don't have the hand on what you're doing anymore.
We're driving about like 3.5%, but I don't think it's the traffic numbers or the monetization that counts in the first place. The most important thing about it, in my opinion, is that we can't take for granted that we will remain relevant. And if we lose our relevance as news sources, we're dead. That's one of our biggest assets. And that means reaching out to a younger generation. And we have to fight for every generation and every year that's coming up there, and that's growing up with news. And you have to go and reach out to the people. And you obviously find a younger demographic a lot easier on Facebook than you find them anywhere else. And if you want to remain relevant as somebody who delivers news, but also as somebody who plays an important part in a political online discourse. And the political discourse has dramatically moved to online. You have to go out and be present in social media to remain relevant for a younger set of people as well. And that is, even before talking about traffic and revenues, that is one of the key factors.
Is it true in Russia as well, just switching Yandex and Kontakte for Facebook and Google?
Yes, I would say that in current Russia, social networks is an ecosystem where people feel themselves more open less regulated, less controlled by the state than in traditional media or, I don't know, somewhere on the street. That's why many people express their opinions, their negativeness, whatever. They do it in the social networks. And we as a news agency, we understand that the best audience are in the social networks. We also, we don't have an idea that the people from out the Facebook or Vkontakte will go to the website, the main website. No, they live in their universes. They want us to deliver them news there. And mostly they don't use this link to come from their infrastructure, from their universe out to the traditional websites, which are already turned to be traditional. Websites we now call the traditional media, and social network channels are new media.
We're running out of time, but I have one important question. News used to be in the newspaper, and the newspaper used to be part content, part commerce, and it was sometimes difficult to figure out why people were buying the paper. Was it because of the classified or because of content? We've separated that in the website in a lot of ways. Is it coming back? What is the relationship between content and commerce going forward?
May I? I think a lot of the newspaper business, especially on weekends, was driven by commerce because people would buy the newspaper for classifieds, for cars, for jobs, and for whatever houses or apartments. And we've separated that. I think that the classifieds also work in the internet space, work very differently. But I think the only way to go forward and to maintain margins within our news business is that you have to grow into the value chain of e-commerce. So instead of just marketing the advertising of others, I think you also have the possibility to involve yourself as a news site far much more into the e-commerce value chain. I think Burda is doing a very good job on that. We also tried a couple of magazines where we try to drive users to special commerce sites. It's not very easy because you always have to differentiate what is news and what is commerce, and I think that the German regulation is quite strict on that one. But I think users want to be led to e-commerce because that's what they do in newspaper. I mean, if you read a magazine, you see something you want to buy, you rip out the page and you go to your browser. And I think that is the way that the internet media can solve. They can just link intelligently to whatever product. So I think it's a very important thing.
I very much agree with Donata that news organizations need to try to get much earlier into the value chain than they're doing now, and it's a sad reality that a lot of the news organizations lost their traditional e-commerce business. It's different for the Spiegel because we've never had it. We've never had classifieds in the magazine. We've always had a very, very strict separation of church and state in as here's the journalistic side and somewhere in a completely different part of the landscape and the building is the advertising, and that will remain true for us because I think it's a lot easier on the internet to blur the lines between journalism and commerce, and you absolutely shouldn't do that. You hurt your journalistic integrity, and that was one of the most important valued things that you have. But so I think especially at the Spiegel it is really, really difficult looking at its history to see what you can do e-commerce wise. So we're certainly not the poster child for that.
In Russia?
We all, I think, have one and the same problem, how to get money from the web. We understand all the advantages of web, except one disadvantage. We can't get money from there as we do it from the traditional platforms. We in Russia now are, with great attention, are looking at the experiment with paywall. One of our best market newspaper, Vedomosti, which is a joint venture of Financial Times and Wall Street Journal, they made a paywall scenario for their news in web. And it is very strange for Russia, because in Russia we have the tremendously high level of piracy, and people are not used to pay for anything for any kind of legal contact. But at the same time, we see as a prime level of audience, those who can pay, they start to pay. If this experiment will show us, like the New York Times scenario, that they have already very high level of subscription, if we will see that it works and people still want to trust for those news which they pay for, because it somehow gives them more credibility in what they are buying, let's say. I think we will also somehow follow this scenario.
Thank you very much. I think we're completely out of time, and I think we're already quite late here in the conference. So I'd like to thank everyone, and I hope we contributed a bit more to the understanding of the future of news.